You're listening to a Thames Estuary Partnership podcast, celebrating London's famous tidal river. We hope you enjoy it.
Hello, I'm Eve Sanders and I'm the Estuary Edges Officer at the Thames Estuary Partnership. I hope you're all keeping safe and well and enjoying the last of the summer sunshine, which, if you're anything like me, you're finding pretty hard to accept. Today I'm joined by the #Oneness team, which is a fantastic organisation aiming to make London the first city to no longer use single-use plastic water bottles. I'm joined by two brilliant women who I've been very fortunate enough to work with. Alice and Izzy, thank you very much for joining me today. I'm joined here by Alice Chamberlain and Isabel Cotton from the #OneLess campaign. Alice and Isabel, can you just tell me a bit about what your roles are for One Less?
Yeah, thank you so much for having us join. It's very exciting. I'm Alice Chamberlain. I work as a project assistant on the One Less campaign based at the Zoological Society of London. So as part of my role, I work closely with project partners at a London-based environment charity called Thames 21. And we work together to coordinate a range of beach cleanups that happen along the Thames foreshore to determine the extent and scale of plastic bottle pollution in the River Thames and monitor changes over time using citizen science data.
We'll go into further details about those things in a minute. That's quite a comprehensive list. Izzy, can you tell us what your role is?
Sure. Hi, I'm Izzy. I'm the Evidence and Evaluation Officer for the same team as Alice. So I work on gathering data for the team, also on plastic bottle use in London, and kind of using that data to evaluate what progress the campaign's making. So I'm involved in kind of creating guides and reports for the team in London.
Interesting. Okay, so before we go any further, I think we need to say a bit about what One Less is and what it does and how it came about.
So we all know, or for those that don't know, approximately 8 million tonnes of plastic enters our ocean every year. And a lot of this plastic, or in fact the majority of this plastic, originates from land-based sources. So, for example, our plastic bottles, our wet wipes, anything that we're using as humans on land. And plastic bottles are found to be one of the major contributors to the ocean plastic problem. They are a real symbol of our throwaway culture. They're something that we just use once or are designed just to be used once and then disposed of and, in theory, not needed again. And we therefore like to refer to them as our flagship species. So, and our mission at One Less is to eliminate single-use plastic water bottles in London. We're working to change the way that Londoners hydrate, ultimately by ending the reign of single-use plastic water bottles and facilitating a transition to more sustainable approaches, focusing on refilling and reusing and really embracing all the different alternatives that we have here in London. For example, we're lucky enough to have access to clean drinking water from our taps at home. We're lucky enough to have an expanding network of drinking fountains. Lots of the cafes and shops offer refills, and there are loads of different kind of types of refillable water bottles now out there, which you can kind of really allow you to choose which kind of one you want to suit your identity and things like that. They're now kind of a fashion accessory almost, or
a novelty water bottle.
Exactly.
Although not novelty to the point that we then throw it away and get a new one.
Exactly. You can become really attached to your refillable water bottle friend. So in 2016, figures actually showed that Londoners were purchasing over 1 billion single-use plastic water bottles a year, which is a really crazy number and really kind of difficult to comprehend. And many of these single-use plastic water bottles are making their way into the River Thames and potentially flowing out to the ocean. There's lots of different kind of campaigns out there focusing on tackling ocean plastic, which is brilliant, and it's really helped it kind of increase on the agenda. But One Less takes a really kind of unique, collaborative, systemic approach to tackling the issue at source by working with a growing movement of pioneering individuals, with communities, with businesses, with different NGOs to really find and implement solutions to help transform the whole system of hydration in London by focusing on all these kind of different aspects which will help shift us to a refill and reuse model rather than this single-use plastic water bottle model. And then in terms of how One Less came about, all of the One Less partners are members of the Marine Collaboration, which is a group of marine NGOs that are working together to put value at the heart of different solutions. And One Less was initially launched as an experiment, but it's worth kind of mentioning that both Izzy and I are based at ZSL, but One Less is actually a collaborative project between 4 different organisations, including yourselves at the Thames Estuary Partnership, Forum for the Future and Comms Inc, and then obviously ZSL. So the idea is that we combine all our different backgrounds and expertise in science and policy and systems change and sustainable estuarine management and communication to kind of help alleviate as many barriers as we can and inspire and create impactful change as well.
So it's quite an information-focused campaign then. You're essentially trying to get the information over to people that, you know, this is a serious issue and there are ways you can reduce your plastic waste. So do you, when you go to sort of, you know, campaign like fairs and I'm guessing you go into schools and that kind of thing, how do you get that message across to people? Or is that the golden question?
Yeah, I guess it is the golden question, and we kind of want to be able to communicate our kind of key messages to as many different individuals but also different organisations as possible. So kind of on an individual level, we'll kind of partner up with other NGOs at public events that happen along the Thames or in London, kind of raise awareness of how much of an issue plastic bottle pollution is in the River Thames and kind of highlight all the different solutions that are available in terms of London's now got an expanding network of drinking fountains. There are so many different types of refillable water bottles you can use, and all these kind of great things that have been happening over the past few years, but also kind of using our kind of pioneer network, which I think we'll kind of potentially discuss a little bit later, but to access some of their contacts and give them an opportunity to discuss with different organisations how they're all taking action as well, and kind of raising awareness within their networks to kind of spread the word and inspire further change whilst kind of gathering momentum.
Amazing. Okay, we've touched on the scale of the issue. It's obviously on a large scale, but how does that affect wildlife? And I'm guessing people as well.
Yeah, so, I mean, there's evidence of plastic bottle pollution along the River Thames kind of every time you're close by, whether you're walking, cycling or running anywhere along the River Thames, you're likely to see plastic bottles floating on the surface or deposited on the foreshore. And kind of we've done a lot of work with Thames 21 to kind of help determine this kind of extent and the scale and kind of whereabouts they're being found. And kind of so far as part of that programme, we found that we found and removed more than 100,000 single-use plastic bottles from the Thames. It's a real crazy number and really kind of hard to visualise. But as you can imagine, the River Thames kind of it's a huge haven for wildlife, as well as, and now is home to the plastic bottle litter as well. So we know that there are 125 different species of fish. If you're lucky enough, you might even see a dolphin. There's crazy bird wildlife like cormorants, kingfishers. It's such an awesome place for wildlife to kind of be and thrive. And I guess the main kind of visible impacts of marine plastic pollution on these wildlife species that we see in the Thames are either through entanglement, where wildlife in the river get caught up in the plastic and it can cause injury and sometimes death, and also ingestion, where an animal can ingest a larger plastic item when it may cause further blockages, damage internal organs, and again threatening its survival. Lots of research around this area that is happening along the Thames is focusing on microplastic. So microplastic, it's got these tiny pieces of plastic which are less than 5 millimeters in size typically, and they are often mistaken for food by marine life and pass into the food chain, releasing toxins and again posing a huge threat to marine wildlife. So actually a paper came out yesterday about how the River Thames has some of the highest recorded levels of microplastics in rivers in the world. And it really reflects how local the problem is. So, we see these crazy pictures from the other side of the world of how much plastic they're having to kind of deal and manage, whereas actually we've got this problem still right here in London locally that we should be doing something about to kind of help protect our ocean.
And just to go back to that number that Alice mentioned earlier, the 100,000 water bottles that we've collected from our Thames Bottle Monitoring Programme, just to say that we think this is really just the tip of the iceberg, and we're still trying to understand how much plastic really is inside the River Thames.
I mean, that's just such a scary, kind of mind-blowing thought. But why is the Thames such a magnet for litter? I mean, I'm guessing it's because of population size, and as we all know, the Thames is a very industrial kind of crafted estuary. It's not, unless you go further out, it's not that natural anymore. Is that the reason, or is it because of the way the tide flows, or the bends, the curves in the estuary? Why is that?
Good question.
Yeah.
So I guess cities have always been kind of a hub for increased kind of human presence and human activity, and research has shown that kind of the levels of plastic found in nearby water sources is related to kind of the human densities in these cities. And London is incredible, and it's also a kind of, we describe it as a coastal city, similar to Tepes. We kind of refer to it on London and on sea. So we're lucky enough to have the Thames on our doorstep. There's lots of different research out there, and I guess like London has such a high population density, so much of our everyday activities are based along or near or close to the River Thames, and it's such a direct relationship, and it's so easy for kind of mismanaged waste to get back into the river as well.
Yeah.
But you can't control for all plastic because it's not a closed system.
Yeah.
Plastic's going to kind of leak out.
So I guess the number of people kind of reflects the amount of plastic in the water, which again is sort of a bit mental to think about. So, I mean, what's the future then? What are the Oneness milestones so far? I guess that's kind of a question for both of you.
Yeah, so the campaign has made significant progress since we started in 2016. London has come so far in shifting away from using single-use plastic water bottles and really embracing this refillable and reuse system. To kind of share some of the examples that we've been working on, particular, I touched on earlier about the Oneness Pioneer Network. This is the network that we launched in 2018, which represents a kind of a growing number of different organisations working across London to take action to eliminate single-use plastic water bottles. And it ranges from lots of different types of organisations, from London attractions to local councils to retailers to just loads of different types of organisations. And since its launch, more than 80 different organisations have joined the network, which really kind of demonstrates the depth and breadth of action that these types of organisations are taking. And Izzy's actually been leading on interviewing a selection of these pioneers to capture data from them on the action that they've taken to eliminate single-use plastic water bottles. So you can find lots of this information on our website looking at these case studies, but to provide a brief summary, collectively the Pioneer Network members have collectively eliminated more than 4.4 million single-use plastic water bottles from their supply chains, and to kind of avoid that getting potentially into the river and into the ocean. In addition to that, they've installed more than 300 refill points, making it easier for their team members or members of the public to refill on the go. They've provided more than 20,000 refillable water bottles. And in addition to the action that they've taken on single-use plastic water bottles, they've also eliminated more than 9.1 million other single-use plastic items. So we're really finding that once organisations take action on single-use plastic water bottles, it initiates further action that they want to take within their organisation to tackle other items of single-use plastic.
I would definitely agree with what Alice has said. Just to touch base on some of the changes that have been taking place in London's public spaces. In 2018, we launched a fountain network with the Mayor of London and MIW water cooler experts. of 28 fountains all across London in different spaces. And in just under 2 years, those fountains have refilled, I think, something like 750,000 bottles, which is brilliant. And the Mayor and Thames Water have subsequently funded for 100 more fountains. So we're pleased to say that fountains are going to become a lot more, and have become a lot more common in London's public spaces now. And there is much more opportunity for Londoners to refill on the go now, rather than, as Alice has said, buy needless plastic water bottles.
That's such an amazing, number of, when you think about that in terms of people not buying plastic bottles and coming to these fountains, that's an incredible achievement. But why? So that's quite a simple answer, really. You think about people buying plastic bottles in the past, and really putting fountains there. It's such a logical idea. It makes so much sense. So if people if people didn't know about this, and even me just walking around, I've seen them out and about, but is there some kind of map or app or something that they can go and try and reuse their bottle other than buying a new one?
Yeah, definitely. There is an app called the Refill app, which you can download from, I think it's the Play Store or Google Play. And all our fountains our Oneness fountains are mapped on there. And the Mayor of London's fountains are on there, and other private fountains that you can access. So yes, if you're not aware of the Refill app already, it's free to download. And whenever you're out and about in London, you can also find cafes or restaurants where you'd be able to go in and get your water bottle topped up.
Brilliant. Okay, well, I'll be downloading that shortly. So can we just touch a little bit on Oneness and policy? How has Oneness influenced policy, or how does it hope to influence policy in the future?
We communicate a lot of the data that we collect through our Thames Water Monitoring Programme, through our Fountain Fund work, with policymakers to provide recommendations and to support the implementation of different conservation solutions. Some of the recommendations from Oneness were fed into London's environment strategy, which included a pledge to cutting single-use plastic water bottle usage, which is now a key policy objective for the Mayor of London, which has been fantastic and really kind of helped support this wider rollout of drinking fountains that we've seen across the city, and expansion of the refill scheme that Izzy was just talking about. And it's kind of really helping make a significant impact in the amount of single-use plastic water bottles that are being used in London. Oneness and other organisations in London, elsewhere across the UK, are also, working to tackle ocean plastic and make sure that it's high up on the UK government agenda, which is super important for us to make significant change. And it was brilliant when it was kind of included in the government's 25-year environment plan. But we'd really like to see further policy commitments from the government on single-use plastic water bottle reduction, and more efforts to encourage people to switch from using their single-use plastic water bottle to refilling and reusing instead.
So with that in mind, what does Oneness hope to achieve in the future? Is it to get people more involved, to get the Mayor more involved, and government more involved?
Yeah, definitely. We're really hoping to kind of continue and build upon the momentum. Oneness was initially set up as an experiment, and we've learnt so much about the whole system of hydration in London so far, and some of the barriers for individuals and organisations wanting to go Oneness. And as we've discussed, we've made such significant progress so far, but there's still so much more to be done. We want businesses, we want people and policymakers in London to continue on the same trajectory and maintain and kind of gather this momentum to not be using their single-use plastic water bottles, but to switch and reuse and refill instead. We also want, we want to showcase all the things that we've learned in London. It's been a really kind of incredible process in being able to fully identify what needs to change and how we might go about it. And we really want to showcase these learnings to the other cities across the UK, but also across the world, to help other places overcome their challenges, their barriers to going Oneness, and to help their citizens hydrate in a way that doesn't need to use single-use plastic water bottles.
Brilliant. Okay, thank you. And I guess one of the most important questions, how can people get involved, help the issue and find out more?
Yes, the number one thing you can do is, it's in the name, is to go on less. If you don't already use a refillable water bottle already, and Eve, I know you do, so
Gold star.
Golden star to you. Going on less is one of the easiest things that you can do to tackle and eliminate single-use ocean plastic. You know, we're lucky enough in London to have access to safe drinking water, and we really should be making the most of this and carrying and using a refillable water bottle when and where you can, to show your commitment to the ocean and to kind of show that you're taking this active change to help protect our ocean. We can also encourage you to go to our website and make the One Less pledge if you haven't already done so. And as we discussed at the beginning, we're kind of trying to talk to as many different types of organisations and learn about the action that they've been taking. So if your organisation is taking action to eliminate single-use plastic water bottles, we've really encouraged them to sign up to the Pioneer Network so they can share their learnings with other organisations that are doing similar things, but also provide an opportunity to find out from others about some of the challenges that they've faced and how they've managed to kind of help kind of remove some of those barriers that they've been faced with. You can also follow us on our social media channels using #OneLessBottle, so that one's nice and easy to remember. And if you're interested in getting involved in any of our bottle count events or beach cleanups along the River Thames, definitely reach out to our partners at Thames 21. It's a really good day out in terms of being along the River Thames and getting involved and being able to see it all firsthand.
I can second that. I did one last year and it was so much fun. So definitely recommend people to go and sign up for one of them.
I think just generally to encourage people to continue to refill and reuse and not lose all our momentum against single-use plastic that's been quite hard won over the past few years. So as Alice says, keep filling up with a reusable bottle at home while you can.
Great. Thank you very much. So we kind of know what One Less is. We know what you're aiming for and the amazing things that you've achieved so far. So Izzy, your role is kind of about evaluating the data that you're collecting and looking at the outputs from that. Is that right?
Yep.
Tell us about you've been producing an exciting questionnaire. Tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, sure. So we at One Less, alongside with yourselves, Eve, at Thames Estuary Partnership and Thames 21, we've launched a public online survey this summer. It's called Perceptions of the River Thames. And as many listeners will know, we're three charities that work quite regularly together on environmental issues that face London's river. And with this public survey, we really want to know how people in London currently view and are using the River Thames, because we want the public to be more involved, both in protecting the river and also enjoying the river when they're out and about.
So people can take this themselves, is that right? By logging on to Twitter, I believe. Yes,
we're promoting it every week on Twitter, releasing one question as part of our Thames Tuesday tweets, if you look out for the hashtag. But it is also on our website, which I think Alice has already mentioned, at onelessbottle.org. So if you click on our ocean plastic problem page, you'll find a link.
Brilliant, thank you. With the results from the survey, what are you hoping to sort of take from it?
So I guess essentially we want to know what people think of the river in many different ways. So maybe how the river makes people feel when they're there, out and about, what they see when they're walking past or cycling past, even what they smell when they're by the river, or maybe what they think of the River Thames while they're sitting at home and they can't access it. And we're also interested in how people might perceive its environmental health. So how healthy do the public think the river really is, and what wildlife are they aware is living underneath the water? And for us at One Less, we're always very keen to understand more about Londoners' plastic habits. So there are questions in there about whether you use London's tap water and what you might think of it, and what you think of plastic pollution in the River Thames more generally. So for any River Thames enthusiasts, if you have any spare time to fill it in, it should be quite a fun and simple survey to complete.
Great. And I mean, do you expect to see anything from the results? Like, are you is there anything that you're predicting a trend will show?
Yeah, we're not sure about kind of what the overall trend will be. We've been running the survey for about a month now, since June. We've seen some kind of initial results, which are quite surprising actually. What was interesting, I had a look the other day, was to see how closely some people feel the River Thames aligns to kind of London's iconic identity. So some people were saying it's as iconic as Big Ben or as Buckingham Palace, which was really great to see. And I think at the moment we can see quite a range and differences in opinion on how clean or dirty people perceive the river to be. Those two words came up quite a lot actually. Yeah, at the moment we're not quite sure what the general trend for Londoners will be. And yeah, just mentioned before, for us at One Less, the theme of plastic is real interest to us, and the issue has come up already quite strongly in a few answers. So for some people, their view of the Thames does seem to be, sadly, inextricably linked to the issue of plastic. So it'll be really fascinating in the autumn to do a full analysis of the data and really understand where the general public is at as a whole on our city's river.
That's going to be so fascinating. I'm really looking forward to seeing the results of that. And I guess you'd kind of think, people go for a walk by the river, and there's been a lot of studies to show that, the whole blue mind concept, the mindfulness by the river, it's proven to be really good for us. So I guess, if we see a clean river and we start encouraging more wildlife into the river, that's only going to further improve people's mental well-being, and, on top of that, the aesthetic sort of side to it as well.
Exactly, yeah. There are so many benefits to the general public for having a clean, healthy river. And if we can maintain it cleanly, then everyone can enjoy it in many different ways. Definitely. Just to note also that obviously currently at the moment we're living with the COVID-19 pandemic. So currently our fountain network is closed due to COVID-19. But our fountain sites are monitoring the Mayor's guidance and government guidance on this regularly, and they hope to open these sites as soon as it's safe to do so. But you can still refill your refillable water bottle at home, which is a safe way to keep hydrated when out and about. And just to note that the Refill app and Refill have produced guidance for how you can use a refillable water bottle safely at the moment.
Thank you both very much for joining me today. You've been amazing. You're very inspirational, so thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks, Eve.
Thank you so much for listening to our latest episode of Talk of the Thames. I hope you enjoyed listening to it as much as we enjoyed recording it. Just a couple of things to note: that the drinking fountain guidance may have changed, as this was a pre-recorded podcast, so do go to the government website to find out more on the latest guidance. Also to note is the questionnaire that Isabel mentioned has now closed, but you can check back on the social media pages of both One Less and Thames Estuary Partnership to see the latest on #ThamesTuesday and the results which will follow shortly.